unicorn, like women's pink, rubber coated insulated water bottle. Like that's my exact product. Now, the more specific you get to the product, the more specific the search is, the lower your search volume is going to be. So what we always look to do on product launches is like we try and find the intersection between good search volume and good to us is like maybe even a couple thousand, depending on the budget, that also have really good relevancy to the product. Because what you're trying to do is you want to get in front of your exact shoppers. So example would be insulated water bottle is going to be really expensive and not super specific to my product. Like it's kind of specific, but not really specific. I'm trying to say like, okay, where can I start getting super specific to my product, but it's going to have enough search volume that I can get the sales volume that I need. So I would focus more on that versus than I would looking at only search volume. A bit of a technical answer here is we don't quote move them, meaning we're not going to pause the existing keywords. We're simply going to launch them in another match type. Again, make sure to keep the bids lower. Amazon actually, if you read their recommendations, they recommend keeping bids lower on broad and phrase match, even lower than the exact match. When we would launch those is honestly really dependent performance of the account and availability of the budget. So if you launch a keyword in exact phrase and broad, so you have 50 keywords, right? And you launch them in exact phrase and broad, you technically have, 150 keywords that you've launched. And the potential of broad and phrase to spend could be quite high. So again, you just want to make sure it makes sense. It seems super simplistic, but if you are in a phase where you're struggling to control total ACoS and ACoS, to fix those two numbers, it really means that you have to lower down your ad spend with ideally little to no impact of the total sales or the ad sales in the case of ACoS. If you introduce a whole, again, those 50 keywords in exact phrase and broad, and those you probably need to test and optimize the bids, etc., you're introducing a lot of additional ad spend into the account. So you do want to be aware of that and be careful with that. So that's kind of a benchmark that we use. But overall, I would say, I don't know if I would have like a certain time frame or a frame which I would hold back on. It really is dependent on the performance of the account. Another good question, which best bid strategy for phrase and exacts when you move? So again, we don't really move them. We would simply launch them in addition. We like to separate them by campaign as well. Kind of gives us a little bit more control over, say, budgets for things. Now, as far as the bidding strategy, we're a super huge fan of using mainly dynamic down only. If it is a keyword that we want to ensure that we get impressions for, so for our launch keywords, for our main keywords, for anything we're trying to be aggressive with, we prefer a fixed bidding strategy. It's still going to be the same. It's still going to be pick highly relevant keywords. One other tip is pick keywords that fit within the budget of the account that you're launching. So for instance, if I have a couple $100 a day budget versus $50 a day budget, those launches are actually going to look a little bit different because I can't afford that many clicks on a $50 a day budget. Or if I had, a couple $100 or $1,000, I have a lot more room for clicks. So actually, you want budgets to play into your launch strategy. The other thing that you want to keep in mind, do not expect profitability on launch. This is a huge one. There's a lot of people that try and pull back and knee-jerk for profitability right out of the gate. That is not going to happen. The reason why it's not going to happen, and I'll tell you the numbers behind the numbers, is that ACoS is just going to be high on your product launches, and that is a function of two things. One, the aggressive cost per click you have to set to be able to get visibility in the beginning, and two, how low your product conversion rate is going to be, especially if you're launching without reviews. Those two things, once you start to be able to bring your cost per clicks down because you gain momentum or you're optimizing your bids, and then two, once your product conversion rate starts to increase because you're getting those reviews, maybe you're optimizing your listing a little bit more because you've learned more about your target market, that is going to help bring down your target ACoS. So those things, again, conversion rates is going to be low, high cost per clicks. That's actually like the nuts and bolts of why your ads are not profitable, and it's almost unreasonable to expect profitability in the beginning. And that's actually why, if you've ever had a product where you're like, no matter what I do, I cannot seem to bring the ACoS down, struggling here, it's a function of that your conversion rate is remaining low and it's not improving, and your cost per clicks are remaining high and you're not able to improve them due to the market or something else. So again, I would still say pick highly relevant keywords, Also, make sure that whatever keywords that you have fits within your budget. Launch them. Aggressive, sponsored products, exact match, potentially sponsored brand video, exact match if you have the creative. Double down on that for a couple weeks and then start expanding from there. Hello, and welcome back to a very special and first time episode of Ask Junglr. So if this is your first time joining, I want to say first off, thank you. Looks like we already have some questions rolling in the chat. So this segment is one that we do every single Thursday for about an hour, where you can show up, ask your Amazon ad questions, and get them answered in real time. And so we use the chat option. So whatever streaming platform you're using, we're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. We got a question in the chat. I'm like, hey, you guys still going live on LinkedIn? Yes, we are. And so whatever chat box you have, whatever streaming platform, feel free to ask your questions there. And if you're watching the replay, I would recommend, so I'm going to bring up, we have a really cool place on our website, which we're constantly updating. This is our Ask Junglr page, which you can actually see the live now streaming there, which is awesome. If you want to get updated on future lives, suggest you follow our Google Calendar. And we're also have embedded all of the recordings. So if you want to go back, look at past recordings, you can do that there as well. We have even more resources because I know sometimes it's hard to sift through an entire hour live, even though you really want the answers to those questions. So if you are not on our newsletter list, highly recommend you do that. You should be able to find the link to sign up for that at the bottom of the page, because what we're doing is we actually condense all of these learnings for you in a weekly email that goes out, again, only if you're subscribed to our newsletter. You can actually see a breakdown of every single one of the questions that are being asked each week, as well as a link so you can jump right to our answers to those questions. So highly recommend getting on our newsletter so you can get access to that, and do expect more and more insights like this coming out so we can help you get to the answers to your questions as quickly as possible so you can start improving your Amazon advertising today. Without further ado, drum roll, this is why I'm so excited for this. You might have seen the teasers and the post out on LinkedIn, but today we have our first guest, Andrew Morgan. So welcome, which we actually have some questions that he's going to be the best one to answer these. So I'm excited, but I'll do a quick intro, Andrew, and if you want to add anything to it, let me know. But Andrew is the CEO and founder, I got that correct, right, of Marknology. Yeah, so they are a brand accelerator, which means they handle everything, which is why I'm excited to have people like this. So Andrew and I jam offline all the time on ad strategy. So he definitely knows what he's talking about in the ads and will help us get really good context for that. But they also do full account management. And their team is amazing at all things Amazon, both advertising as well as creative. So if you're looking for someone and you're saying, hey, I need a little bit more help other than maybe just the advertising piece, Andrew's definitely one of those in the space that I recommend. So I'm super excited to have him on. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Liz. It's exciting to be here. I like Q&As because it's a little exciting because you never know what you're going to get. You haven't done all this prep to speak to a certain thing. So it's kind of just like, let's see what we get. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I know these, like you were saying, they require maybe a little bit less prep work, although in some ways they require more prep work because you have to know how to answer pretty much anything. So feels like we've prepped for this for what, you've been doing it
10 years.
10 years. So more OG than I am. But yeah, we've been prepping for years for this Q&A. So we're here to bring those insights for you. So yeah, well, let's get started. So the way that this format works, type in your questions in the chat. I'm going to pull them up. Me and Andrew and I will get you answers to your questions. This is another cool one. Let's says here's a question on negative targeting and sponsored display view and remarketing campaigns. Andrew, have you seen this update?
No, I don't think I have, Liz. I think I'm gonna have to let you take this one.
No, you're good. I'm actually in an account checking. So we network with a lot of different people, which is awesome because we get insights into a lot of different things happening, regardless if it's our team touching it, Andrew's team touching it, or others in the space. And this is a very, very recent update. So if you would have asked me this question, I think about a week ago, I would have told you, hey, sorry, it's not possible. It's now possible. FYI, we have the ability to add negative targets and ASINs into sponsored display campaigns. So you can do that. It's going to be in your interface exactly the way that it shows up inside of, say, like sponsored product negative targeting or sponsored brand negative targeting. You're going to want to go down to the ad group level and add it as a negative. And the cool thing is now, when we do sort of like remarketing campaigns, sometimes we want to exclude our own brands. If you're not intending to do brand defensive targeting, you actually can exclude brands as well as excluding products, which can be really helpful. Or if there's like a competitor brand, you know, that you don't perform well on, you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to see. Looks like there's client data on here. I would show you what it looks like, but I can't pull up a client account on live.
Yeah, I'm glad you had the update because I would have said I didn't think it was possible.
Yeah,
at least at this point, but it sounds like it's a new release. You know, it's not often, like, we don't obsess about the negative ASINs for the most part, you know, in regards to all aspects. But yeah, with certain products, going against certain brands, it can be like, can definitely want some of that in there. On the retargeting. So I mean, that's just another feature, more control they're giving us. And if you're already running SD view and remarketing, the negative should be right there in a tab.
Yep.
So we'll have to be jumping in there. I'll have to pass this on to the team and see if there's anybody we're doing a lot of spend on. I would say like our spend around SD in general has been pulled back just a little bit. At the end of Q4, like going into Q1. So we don't do tons of heavy spend here, but as we have a lot of brands that grow in spring, like very seasonal brands. And so that's when stuff starts turning back up for us right around April, I think, in a big way.
Yeah. I think for us it's really similar. And like I said, I think this update, when I said like a week ago, I think somebody notified me about it about, I want to say it was 3 days ago. So it's not like you're slacking. And I would say we're similar in that although we're aware of the update, our spend on sponsored display tends to be very limited, as well as our bids tend to be pretty low. So for us, there's really not a lot of ad waste happening. But if you wanted to know how to do it, that would be how you do it. Go into your interface, go into the ad group for whatever sponsored display ad you want to add it to, and there's now a negative targeting tab, which is pretty sweet. So you heard it here first. Cool. Yeah, Maria had a quick question about, this is one, if we're not going live on LinkedIn. We are going live on LinkedIn. We should be live on LinkedIn. I'll have to have the team check it post after this. If you're not getting notifications, it's probably a LinkedIn problem, which boo LinkedIn if you're not notifying people we're going live. But yeah, and there is some weird connectivity in as far as like LinkedIn to StreamYard, which is what we're using. And like if I post a comment, it doesn't post on LinkedIn in the thread, which is I find kind of annoying, but it is what it is. The joys of technology. Cool. Next question, which this is one that Drew, you'll be able to answer better than I, and it's got a couple parts to it, so I'll pull it up. She said, I have a question though. One of our client listings, there was a sudden drop in sales and we noticed a one pre-offering, which has surprisingly turned out to be Amazon. That does happen. So her follow-up question is, apparently Amazon found previously reimbursed units to the client and decided to sell them. They're winning the buy box. That's great. On the client's listing, do you think there's a workaround on this? So I do know this happens, but as we're ad agency, which is why I like having people on with more broader perspectives. Andrew, do you have any perspective on this? Is there anything you can do, or are you pretty much stuck till they sell out?
Well, I think you need to get a little bit more information. So, one would be like trying to go and order from 1P and seeing how many units you can actually add to your cart. Is there like a limit? Does it stop at 10? Does it stop at 15? Like, as a brand, could you potentially buy them back? Another thing to look at is if you had reimbursed units, another data point would be like, how many did we have reimbursed? If it's been like, if you have a large, brand account with tons of SKUs, tons of products, might be hard. But if you can identify exactly how many they have, you can then make a better decision of like, is this going to be a long-term problem? Like, did they buy these from a train or a trailer that went sideways or like something like that and they got damaged? Is it like coming from we've had instances where somebody else started selling to 1P when they made an account as the brand and started selling to 1P, and that was a major problem. But if you're just talking about some reimbursed units, I would try not to, freak out about it in general and try to be like, okay, let's be logical about this. How many actual products do they have? And if it's a limited amount, you can either buy them back or try to sell through them. There isn't really a workaround to getting the buy box back until those units are sold. The next thing you can do is proactively, when you're thinking about reimbursed units or disposing of units or any of those things, turn it off where Amazon is not allowed to repackage or resell or some of those things. You can have some of those things turned off. And so it might cost you a little bit more to have them coming back to your warehouse or things like that. But I almost always recommend people don't dispose because, I don't know about you guys, but here in Kansas City, I was driving around yesterday and there's just a big warehouse that says Amazon liquidation sale. And it's just a big swap shop in there of people's products and brands and whatever. So I'm just really careful around, our FBA settings, making sure stuff's coming back to us, not just being like, oh, here's a short dollar here to get some reimbursements. Does that mean Amazon's going to resell my product and ultimately like hurt my buy box or whatever? So try to get more data, I would say, on how many they have, and then try to make a decision from there.
Awesome. I appreciate the perspective. I was pretty sure you could turn it off, but I wasn't quite sure. So definitely nice to have someone on here who actually knows, because my answer would have been, I'm pretty sure this is an idea, although I would have missed the part about seeing how many products and kind of getting an idea of that. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Sometimes it's just a couple and you just need, you can buy them back and then you can even resell them yourself. Like, it just depends on how important that is to you. If it's coming from Amazon themselves, it's not necessarily a bad look.
Yeah.
You're just not getting the sales,
Yeah. Maria said, unfortunately, there are 84 units available, and it's also a high-priced item. So, boo. Unfortunately, it's kind of like, see what you can potentially do or wait it out, and then just make sure in the future, you could see if you can have that turned off.
Of course. Sorry, not great news.
Yeah, unfortunately, but at least you know the possibilities and what you can do. Cool. Next one come from Gabriella. I have noticed we have okay sales until the afternoon when it really ramps up. How do you identify if this is due to shopper behavior or competitor budgets running out? It's part 2 to the question. If competitor budgets, we can explore better organic and decide whether to try to win easier traffic at possibly higher cost in advertising. If it's shopper behavior, do we start to advertise later to save dollars? We'll probably have to just talk through this one. Any initial thoughts?
I think both sound like good, pass forward if that's like, the information you find out. I don't think that there's one way of knowing consumer behavior versus competitor budgets. All I would say is that as time passes, if you have like an unlimited budget, as time passes, you're going to know that its budget's running out. And so just like look and see if that's consistently the same all the time. I don't know about who this gentleman is, but like, we use KPOC. KPOC has day parting that I like because it's not pausing the budgets. It's just reducing bids. And that also tracks like consumer behavior on the platform for your brand. So that gets like, specifically, instead of just like general daytime like averages of what's good and what's not, it's like get specific to your brand. And that's like a tool that I'm like, if you want to test one way or the other with the day parting, meaning like don't change your budgets. If you change the day parting stuff, do you see bigger wins there? I think they both could play a factor. I think there's a factor of budgets running out, and I think there's a factor of just consumer behavior on buying patterns. Like are they buying on their lunch break? What kind of product do you have? Is it something they have to research and they buy later after work? Is it something they're buying on the bathroom break or the lunch break at work? I think every product category kind of has a different customer in that impulse decision. Is it a couple $100 item? Is it a $20. I want to make sure I have toilet paper at home when we get there, type of thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I would definitely say that. I would say my initial thoughts, one, tracking if it's a consumer behavior thing, I think it's a little bit easier because you can track the conversion rates. So Drew mentioned K-pop, which is one I know I talk about ad nauseum for them as well. They have a way to track hourly conversion rate, you know, down to a keyword or potentially a product level. You want to make sure you have enough data to go off of that. So you could, if you don't have access to something that's going to pull the data for you, not as good of a report, but a decent enough one would be if you were able to pull it's only for sponsored products, a campaign report. You could pull hourly data. Now this is for a campaign level, not like say a per product level, which would be preferable to look at, but you'll have to run pivot tables and do some data analysis, but you could kind of track the hours and see like, is the conversion rate increased for this product at a set amount of time? This is just going to be looking at ads, but that might be helpful. As far as tracking, if it's a consumer budget thing, I would say the one thing you could kind of try and infer from, but it's not going to give you really good information. I mean, like really like cut and dry would be like the number of clicks. But then again, you know, like elevation and clicks could be due to, like you said, like consumer behavior, more people shopping. So I know you can track daily through some other means as far as like shopper search behavior, but that's not really going to be able to track, you know, like competitor budgets. If you really wanted to on like say your main keywords, if you had a VA or someone on your team, I don't know if it's worth wasting your time on it, but you could be like, hey, I want you to check, you know, for the, you know, the next 3 days, I want you to check the ads for this, you know, this 2 main keywords, and note if you see like some competitors not showing up or something. I think that would be
Liz,
the only way.
Is there a way to see if your cost per clicks go down later in the day? Like that'd be another kind of sign of like if the competitors are dropping out, like the competitors' budgets are running out, then I would think that your cost per clicks would drop a little bit, in some regard, because like you're bidding with them. So like if they're winning or you're winning, you could even be winning, but once they're gone, you're gonna drop even lower on that cost per click. That could be something that is a sign, I guess, of competitors' budgets running out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's actually that's a really good call out. I appreciate it. Yeah. So I would check those things and see if you can get that. Cool. Gil says, for new campaigns, how do you determine the number of clicks before you change the bids regularly, or 1 to 2 times a week? I have some thoughts on that, but Drew, I'd love to get your thoughts.
So I'm always testing new things, guys. Like I've been in the Amazon space going on. I'm 13 and some change years now. So I think PPC came out in 2012. So 12 years of this. What I would say is that I am not stuck in my ways. I'm always testing. I'm always trying new things. I'm gonna go with more clicks before I make changes if the cost per click is lower. So if I'm getting 20 clicks for $10 because my CPC is 50 cents, I'm going to probably go with, let's say, 20 clicks over 10, depending on like the budgets I have to play with, depending on like, you know, the cost per click, depending on the margin of the product, all of these things kind of coming into play. Like I really think about all of them when I'm making those decisions. Like, can I wait for more data to make a more educated decision? Well, it depends on the lifeline of the client, the lifeline of like how much money we have to spend and what we're going to get. If they're like, I just want you to run it, get all the data we can. Well, I'm thinking way differently than if I'm on a shoestring budget, right? So one is context and perspective of the problem and like really just understanding what you have to play with. Then I would say, you know, when I'm starting out, I almost want to get more clicks before it makes the change. And then as I get it refined, I want it to make like decisions. Like if I'm using automation, I want to make decisions faster. So maybe it's 10 clicks at the beginning, maybe I go down to 5. But once you have a couple hundred clicks on something, you should know, at least by keyword, like you should know pretty well what the conversion rate is, like for that term after you've got a couple hundred clicks. If you've got a couple hundred clicks and no conversion rate, well, there's your answer right there. If you have a few conversions in those couple hundred clicks, you can then say, you can go backwards from there kind of with others and being like, okay, at a 10% conversion rate, it's taken me, 20 clicks, or it's taken me 4 clicks. And every 5th click, I'm getting a sale or something like that. And so then you're able to start being like, well, if that's on average what I'm supposed to be getting, I definitely don't want to get more than 10 clicks. I should be able to get 2 conversions in that amount of time. And so I guess that's a vague answer, but what I'm trying to say is every situation is unique. And so think about that. Like, are you spending $8 a click, like someone in the chat here is talking about a very competitive niche, or are you spending 37 cents in a category that's not as saturated? If it's 37 cents, you can do 10 times what that $8 a click guy is doing. So you just have to kind of put those things in perspective. Liz, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is it's all really relative. Another one to benchmark it off of is, Andrew basically touched on it, like the conversion rate. How many clicks on average does it take me to get a conversion, and so I can benchmark that against how often I'm optimizing my bits. The other, which I appreciate Drew's perspective on, kind of what the cost per click is, because if you extrapolate that out and say, okay, well, I have $8 a click and I have a really low conversion rate, maybe I can't even afford to spend that amount of clicks to be able to get, that data feedback. Maybe that's going to end up with me kind of running at a loss. And so maybe you start to optimize a little bit quicker. In a perfect world, you would wait, but because you also have to keep in mind, performance and profitability, maybe you start to move quicker, which that wouldn't be the best case scenario, but that would, be something that you can do. The other perspective I would add to that is it also depends on your method for bid optimizations. So what we're talking about, like checking everything, how many clicks have occurred since the last time I optimized my bid, where can I make a better data-driven decision? That's probably the best way to do it. We have access to software that allows us to actually every single time there is a click happening on that, it's updating the algorithm to account for those added clicks and sort of helping to recalculate based on a more complete historical data picture, which is, again, it's much more data driven. That sort of incremental optimizations, I want to say, is virtually impossible if you're doing things manually. I can't even imagine the amount of notes and like things you would have to keep for yourself if you wanted to like count how many clicks per your last optimization cycle, or even if you're doing it in bulk files, which I love and we use for bid optimizations. You at that point are like, you're pulling a snapshot, and so calculating how many clicks have occurred since the previous, like, that's really difficult to do. So in those cases, because you just want to make a good decision, you might be doing it. I would recommend it probably about twice a week if you're gonna just kind of go through it manually or do it otherwise, where you want to make the best decision possible, but you also don't want to kill yourself.
Timing's hard to even say, because twice a week, because if you're spending like, I was looking at a budget, we were spending $25 a day. That got us 40 clicks a day on that product, 40 clicks spread between the keywords for that product. It doesn't get to be very many, right? Like, and you start doing them at so 40 clicks for a product, but across, let's say, even 4 keywords, that's only 10 clicks per day. If I'm getting a sale every 4 or 5, maybe I'm getting 2 sales a day per keyword if they're all doing great, right? So if that's the case, I don't need to change it twice a week. I need those to gather clicks so that I can make decisions, and if you're not using automation, maybe you're using some bids like, an 8 at the end, 88 cents or 28 cents or 38 cents or 48 cents or something, so you can see like which ones you've changed and when. But in general, I look almost more at the dollar amount too that I can afford to spend. Like, I'm not trying to get to $40 or $50 a keyword without a sale before I make a change. Like, I'm looking at $20 or $30 on a keyword when I'm getting going. And it just comes down to like, you want to be super accurate. The more, I think, like, it's in the 70s or something, like 70 something clicks is an actual average of making an assumption about something per some mathematics somewhere, right? But it's like, look, if 70 clicks is actually the number, I'm usually making changes a third of the time faster than that, just because I don't want to waste dollars or waste revenue. But you got to figure out your sweet spot. What I could say to someone beginning is get in there and try to obsess about it as little as possible. Obsess about it when you get in there, but leave it alone, and then come back to it and try to make sense of it,
Yeah. Yeah, no, great call out on the amount of ad spend, and the amount of ad spend, the amount of clicks is going to determine like how often, because there is such a thing as over optimizing. There's under optimizing and over optimizing. We're all just trying to hit the sweet spot, which is an ever moving challenge for sure. Yeah, here's a difficult one. I mean, not difficult. Difficult not in the question, but in how do you navigate situations like this is what I would say. So Gilbert asked, for a very competitive niche, my campaigns are running at 1K or over 1K. Oh, is it over 1,000% ACoS? Gilbert, feel free to clarify that.
think so.
I have hundreds of thousands of impressions, a click-through rate of 0.27, and only a 4% conversion rate. What's your strategy for these niches with cost per clicks as high as $8? I'm assuming that high ACoS is a function of the low conversion rate and the high cost per clicks. These are challenging times. Got any answers for him, or how should
I do. I have some stuff for you. So as an agency owner, I hate losing. I don't have a good reputation by picking losing projects or losing brands. So I'm saying that to say, like, I love to win. I like to figure out how to do it. I can see a niche like that. Like, let's say you're in a pet supplement category and you're selling a product with a good margin, but the cost per acquisition is very high. Okay, so like maybe 1,000% ACoS. Well, it's probably $8 a cost per click because there's not that many ways to describe the product. That's what I would assume. If there was 100+ keywords to describe this product, it wouldn't be $8 a bid. There'd be no way, because it's spread too thin, and so it keeps the cost per clicks low. They get that high at probably $8 or more because there's only very few ways to describe it. And so someone like, let's say it's a meal replacement shake or nutritional shake or something like that. It's a category I played in with very high cost per clicks, high cost of acquisition. The thing is that usually in those categories, the brands are willing to pay that because they've played this game out, a longer game. And what they realize is that their customer lifetime value can be very high. So maybe they have a 50% retention rate of keeping customers, and their lifetime value might be, hey, once you get these people on these adult diapers or these nutritional shakes, like, they stay on them. And so it becomes like a viable client over time. That's the only case where this is like an actual possibility of having a sustaining brand. So I'm trying to make that relation to be like, okay, this is what you're thinking about when you're doing this type of stuff. You're in a tight niche. There's very few ways of describing the product or selling the product. You have competitors that understand their metrics very well. So they understand, hey, I'll spend $100 to sell a $30 product, maybe a crazy ACoS, something like that, because I know that like one of every two that I do that with is going to come back and buy for me for another $500,000 as a consumer, something like that. Well, one, it's very tough if you're just doing Amazon. And this is where like these tough niches like this have made me really think about off Amazon strategies to grow my brands, because I don't like losing. I know that if we can, get Amazon going and get momentum, we can be successful. But with $8 clicks and 1,000% ACoS, it can be very, very difficult. It's going to sound outside the box, but in some of these cases, the best success I found was going international with the brand. I got, almost a fourth lower cost per clicks by taking my product to like Amazon Canada. So one was like just expanding internationally with my product line helped me. It takes time to build a niche like this. Just like you have to be able to go really slow compared to other people and slowly get your customers. So I would focus a ton on conversion rate, because that's going to be your absolute only way out, is to improve that conversion rate ultimately. And then once you get that conversion rate much higher, it needs to be higher. I would say somewhere around probably 10% if you want to have a sustainable brand, where even if Amazon is only acting as the place to convert, it's at least converting at a high enough rate that when people get there, they really know what they're getting. They're buying that. You're playing the long game, and you're just doubling and tripling down on those conversion rates that make sense. So I'm going to pause there. There's a whole lot to that to unpack. but ultimately thinking off Amazon for ways that, because when you use Facebook ads, TikTok ads, Instagram ads, think about it like this, guys. Someone can't corner you to just those keywords that are $8 a bid. You're bidding on people's lifestyles and what they like and their zip codes and their income, and no one can just blanket you out like on Amazon in a very competitive niche where there might be 5 to 10 actual keywords that drive sales, and there's a bigger competitor there that's just going to dominate those 5 or 10 and push you out. So the off Amazon strategy thing, conversion rate, because you got to make every single dollar count, and then really knowing your data numbers around customer lifetime value and retention rate to be like, okay, maybe it's 1,000%, but if I do this over this amount of time and my subscribe and save numbers go up, like that's what you're looking for, the subscribe and save to go up or something like that. That's going to show you're going to have recurring customers.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's really, really good perspective. I can add some thoughts on potentially your targeting. No, I don't. Again, I don't know. I can't look at most of us. I think if we looked at the product and look at the keyword, we can be like, oh, okay, it's this problem, it's this problem. You know, we're going off of the information that we have. But Drew's point was right. It's a function of your conversion rate and the high cost per clicks. What I would say is that at a 4% conversion rate and your click-through rate of 0.27 is actually on the low end. It's like on the medium low end. So, and then again, I'm looking at averages I see across every single, so every category is going to be different. Every market's going to be different. Every keyword is going to be different. So I may be off here, but it is possible you might be going after some of the most competitive keywords in your space. I'm guessing that from the $8 cost per clicks. Now, whether or not you have wiggle room, like Drew said, sometimes all of the shopper search is concentrated on 1 or 2 keywords. And that's where Drew was saying like off-platform advertising, different ways to do it, different ways to think outside of the box are helpful because like the market is super limited. And then also in terms of your conversion rate, yes, if you can get your conversion rate up, you can actually fix your ACoS, even if you had the exact same cost per clicks. A way to benchmark, now we're looking at, I'm assuming you're saying ad conversion rate. There's a couple ways to benchmark your conversion rate. One would be brand metrics inside of the ad console. You have to be brand registered to do this. This is going to give you how does my conversion rate stack up for my entire brands. If you have multiple products, there's going to be that sort of ambiguity there. But how does that stack up against the average competitor in my space? And that will tell you, okay, is my conversion rate low for the market or is it high? You can also look at search query performance reports to get conversion rate on a search query level. So basically a shopper search level. Basically, you're just looking for validation. Is this normal for my market or is there ways that I can improve it? The other thing, depending if this is ad conversion rate or not, if this is your average conversion rate, then this answer won't help you. But what we have actually found is that if you're going after some of your best keywords in advertising, typically speaking, your unit session percentage, which is your overall conversion rate, which is also going to include advertising, should be at the very least equivalent. If you're running, now this is if you're running super tight, really, really targeted traffic advertising. So if you're going broader, this might not apply. But your unit session percentage should, or your ad conversion rate should be at the very least equivalent or oftentimes higher than your unit session percentage. We have certain brands where our ad conversion rate is double what their unit session percentage is. And that's the only reason we're achieving the ACoS targets we need to. If our ad conversion rate was the same as the unit session percentage, our ACoS would probably be about double what it is.
Why do you think that is, Liz? Why do you think the ad conversion rate is so much higher than the unit session percentage?
My thought is because, like I said, this is if you're running super targeted advertising, if you're showing up on the exact search pages that are relevant to your market. So when you start, actually, every single audit I do on brands, it's one of the things I look at is unit session percentage to the ad conversion rate. Whenever I see that the ad conversion rate is lower than a unit session percentage, whenever I check the advertising, a couple things are here. One, they're going after, like maybe I'm gonna have to think of something off the top of my head, but like maybe it's a like women's pink insulated metal water bottle, like really like super niche, and they're trying to go after maybe like that women's runner market or something, and they're advertising on the keyword water bottle. Like that's most times what I see. Or the second thing that could happen is all they're running is like autos and broads. And then I go in there and I look at the search terms that are triggered, and it's all of those high volume, low conversion rate stuff. So whenever I see that, again, it's like, for me, it's like go and investigate trigger. It's not like a, oh my gosh, house is on fire, because there might be a brand who's intentionally going after that sort of, you know, broader upper funnel market, which would be fine if that's what you're meaning to do. But if that's not your intention, I would take a look at it.
I was going to offer one more suggestion to the gentleman. There's an example like recently I'm working on, and I'll just share it. It's a leather top hat. Okay, so it's like it's a higher end men's leather top hat. There's not that many search terms around what we're selling besides leather top hat, right? But so leather top hat, if someone wanted to blanket it out, let's say it wasn't me marketing it, someone wanted to blanket my keywords out, there's only 3 or 4 that they could probably throw $10, $15 behind a click, and I would back off and I wouldn't be selling it. So I'm trying to figure out ways to grow this product with sales. And one of the things that I'm doing is thinking about who that customer is, who's buying a leather top hat. Is it a motorcyclist, right? Is it a cosplay guy? Is it an actor or a theater arts guy or girl, right? I'm thinking about who the customer is. What are the things that they're doing? What would they be doing to buy this leather top hat besides just looking for it? Is it to go with a costume? Is it to go with Halloween? Is it to go with a festival? So then thinking about what products can I line myself up with next to those that are not necessarily my main keywords to describe my product, but they are in the realm of my customer. And I can use sponsored display for that. I can use product targeting for that. And it's not about necessarily getting all of your sales and growing your whole business from that, but it's a way of finding, hey, this is where my customers are existing. I can do well over here with supplemental sales. Maybe it's not just describing my product. Maybe it's using the content to help me visualize to stand out from the competition. I'm also showing me at a cosplay convention or a festival convention instead of just like a men's formal dress hat. So depending on what your product is in, what category you're in, there could be something besides just direct keyword response that could get you some sales and get you some insight into your customer.
Yeah, no, those were really great insights. Yeah, it's a cliche. It's been a cliche in marketing forever. What is it? Find your exact market, niche down. The riches are in the niche. It's true, because you know you can be the top hat for the cosplayer. I mean, that is a very distinct market. The only question is how big is that market, and then you get into all the variables. But
that person is looking to be a wizard or they're looking to be a steampunk character, they're not necessarily thinking about the leather top hat. I think they're just thinking about costume ideas and putting their stuff together. And so if they're looking for a cape, if they're looking for maybe a staff, or they're looking for some glasses that go as the steampunk look, can I then show my top hat next to those and spark an idea, or show my product instead of being next to all the other top hats? Can I be next to the capes and the brooms and the glasses and some other stuff like that? And then all of a sudden I don't look like the highest in my category. I look like a great addition to an expensive dress. Cosplay is not a cheap thing. I want to be positioned next to them. My brand is not a cosplay brand, but that is my customer for a leather top hat. Like, how do I get there? And thinking creatively with content and things like that.
Yeah, that is one thing we've seen on occasion is sometimes when you compete in your very distinct market, you don't convert well against, maybe very relevant products, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, that's definitely something you want to dig into and figure out why consumers are not choosing yours. But sometimes if you go into like what we call like quote adjacent markets or something, when you show up on a page where you're sort of like the distinct and only option of that very more specific kind of like option for somebody who would be in that market. Now that's, again, it's like a test and see thing. Sometimes it cannot convert at all because you're going like adjacent. It's not the super relevant niche down, but that could be something to test as well. Cool. Looks like we've been rolling through it. We got here about 40 minutes in. We got about 20 minutes more to go. So if you have any questions, we got another one from Maria, another couple ones we'll definitely pull up, but now's the chance.
Should we try to speed it up through these last ones and just make sure we give everyone a little hit? I don't know what's still in the chat.
Yeah, I think we're good. I'll rush us through it if we need to. But yeah, Maria has a great question. It's not cliche, Maria. I think it's a really good question. We had a question last week about, hey, what's even brand defense? So sometimes those basic questions, I'm like, oh, I forgot people, still have questions around this stuff. So we appreciate it. She said, with a lot of updates in Amazon, any new strategies we can do in preparation for during after Prime Day? Thank you. I mean, they're great. You're thinking ahead. I would say you're ahead of the game here for sure. Drew, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think a couple of things I'll just fire off quickly would be test some like coupons, deals, promotions, strategies now. Start testing those now. So you might have like, I know what coupons do, I know what a deal does, I know what lowering my price right here does, and get some like, tools in your belt before you go into Prime Day just to try something. You don't want to just go and be like, I'm gonna try to set this deal at 10%, or I'm gonna try to set this deal. Go in there knowing some stuff now in the spring to get you ready for Prime Day. The other thing I would say is make sure your content is up to snuff. Like, give it a refresh. I think Amazon likes refreshes in general. So what can you do to update your content? Can you get better? Can you change it to a spring look or a gifting event, and do something fresh and fun that might set you out from the competition to stand out? A picture speaks 1,000 words, and it can make PPC go really, really far. So think about that. Another thing to prepare yourself would be to really, really understand your 3PL and supply chain and inventory stuff this year. With the new FBA placement inventory placement charges, and getting charged for not having enough stock and all the things going on. You just need to make sure that, hey, I feel confident around my strategies here. I feel confident around my stocking and supply chain. I feel confident that my team knows what's up. We're paying attention to this. So I think those three things: making sure your content is freshened up, make sure you've already gone into Prime Day, trying some different strategies, deals, promos, whatever you might want to try, and then make sure you're. I think in 2024, it's about making sure you understand your fees and just how everything's working out. Make sure you're not losing money.
Yeah. I think Drew summed it up perfectly. Prime Day, peak Prime Day, during, before, leading up to, that's the time to capitalize on everything that worked. That is not the time to run like crazy aggressive tests. And I'm going to see if this happens. So what Drew's recommending with coupons, refreshes, all this stuff, you're ahead of the game, Maria. You're thinking about it now, which is the perfect time to think about it, as we're going to kind of get into that prime holiday shopper frenzy. So I would say it's the exact same thing with any new ad types. I know you're talking about like there's vertical ads, there's sponsored display videos now, there's different options for the sponsored brand ads, there's new rest of search plays, like there's all of these options. I would just say test them now in the way that you just typically go about ad tests. And that way, when you're in sort of the middle of the shopper frenzy, you can go, oh, I know that worked. Let me put some more ad dollars behind that.
One little thing to add too would be, you don't want to start deals like when it's time to go, or like we don't want to start an ad campaign, like a new ad campaign that's just targeting your Prime Day deals like the day of. You want it to be ramping up a little bit before, getting some data in there, being ready to go. You can always keep it ramped really down, or like run it up and run it down, that kind of thing. But I'm switching out. If I'm running sponsored brand and I have one item that's in a deal, or a couple deals going on, I make sure that every sponsored brand is now pushing the ones that have the deals. I'm doing all that work on the ad side to just make sure anything I'm running deals with is getting the visibility that it needs, even if that means creating, new campaigns or new sponsored display campaigns or product targeting just for those deals, and making sure they get the budget they need.
Yeah, definitely. Maria says thank you. Of course, we are very welcome. That's why we're here. We appreciate you showing up and asking the questions, because if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't have this segment every Thursday. So we always appreciate. Another great question. This is something I think we've all struggled with and seen, and something we all, I think, kind of hate about the whole Amazon ad. It's one of the weird nuances. Every ad platform has them, by the way. You just got to figure out what they are. So the question is, I gather keywords from search terms that have converted into a sale, but when I incorporate them into a manual campaign, they tend to incur high costs and don't convert as well. I'm sure you've seen this, Drew. I know I have.
I have some thoughts on it. So, this is something that it just takes, you just learn this stuff over time. And I guess you get a stomach for it, you get some patience for it. But for me, you have to understand that all of these different product types display in different places. Okay. So one is, your automatic campaigns. Let's say that that's where you're getting a lot of the keyword harvesting. They're running at broad match. They're showing up all over in different places that even your manual SP campaigns can't show up. So they're showing up, in cheaper spots, different spots,
Mhm.
whatever. You're not just looking for conversions. Okay. Like it's almost like getting lucky. It's like some people go fishing and they think it's luck and they just throw it out there and they catch one and they're like, wow, fishing's easy or whatever. But anyone that's fished a while knows that it's actually a ton of strategy. It's the depth, it's the weather, it's the bait, it's the scent, it's the color, it's the type of fish in the water, it's the line, the way you tie the hook, and it's the line density, and it's all these things. So there's like, you can get kind of lucky. And I try to think about that with keywords too. And as I've been really trying to optimize my brands and lean them up and really figure out the top 5, 10 per product type, I've been trying to get rid of all these outliers that, sure, maybe it brought me a sale
Mhm.
once or twice, but it's not doing it consistently over time. And I think that's what's good about harvesting them and pulling them out, is being like, okay, I caught a fish one time, but I'm going to use that lure 10, 20, 30, 50 more times. And if it's not catching anything, then it was more like luck than something consistent that I can build my brand around. And so
Mhm.
it's almost good to even filter out the ones that are like, these are luck. I'll keep them in automatic. I'm not going to pull it out with just one sale. But whenever I start to get 4 or 5 sales on something, okay, and maybe it's not all within automatic because the 30-day window doesn't give you enough time for 5, but pull them out to manual, run them at broad again instead of exact or phrase, see if that works. And then as they prove themselves, like I continually bring in sales, as the keyword saying to you, like, then you
Mhm.
upgrade them. You can upgrade them then to phrase, or upgrade them then to exact, and be like, this is one that we really care about. Um, but I think, and then it also comes down to the age of the campaigns. Has the automatic been running a long time, and things like that. But try not to have any like connection to them, and be like, okay, I caught you once with this. I'm gonna see if I can catch you 4 or 5 more times, and if I do, then we're talking.
Yeah, definitely. Gilbert saying, I'm learning a lot here. Really appreciate you all sharing the knowledge. Of course, we appreciate you being here. Yeah, I have some other thoughts. Same thing Drew is saying. It's one of the nuances, when you put it in a manual campaign, where is it showing up? Is it the exact same placement? Is the like exact same shoppers coming across it? Not always. One other thing, so I'm in a couple like mastermind groups for Amazon ads, and we were all sort of like, again, these are like observations. We touch a lot of accounts, we've seen a lot of different scenarios. So that just like, again, it's not in Amazon's documentation, but we know it exists. And one of the things that we're noticing, it used to be that you could throw up like a high bid auto or like a high bid broad, or just blow it up as far as like just putting crazy bids on it, and like your campaign would spend overnight. It was kind of scary. What we're noting now is that despite even higher bids, things seem to take a little bit longer to get moving. It feels like the train is taking forever to leave the station. And that's, again, because we're in so many different accounts, we see so many scenarios, we're launching hundreds of campaigns every single week, across everybody I know in my circles. Probably thousands, to be honest. That's an observation we've noted. So it could just be, give it patience, give it time, like Drew was saying. Just know that that's a nuance. The other thing that I would just add to what Drew said is, when you are moving things from anything, be an auto, broad, phrase, wherever you're finding it in sort of maybe your more research campaigns, and then moving it into maybe a more defined manual campaign, I don't recommend at least immediately negating it in the original placement. The reason being is because, like I said, these things take time to get moving. Sometimes it takes you a while to finesse and see where those bids need to be. And if you eliminate it from where it was performing well, then you completely eliminated all that good potential performance. So what you do is you kind of run them in tandem. We personally, we never negate it in the original, and we keep it going. There's some people who eventually will negate it if they're seeing, that sort of manual take off in terms of performance.
Yeah, I have a couple things there too. So like it comes down to kind of how you're organized.
Yeah.
I think people are trying to logically and like systematically be like, okay, I get a conversion here in automatic. I'm going to farm this keyword out. I'm going to put it over here so it's in an organized way. Once it graduates to high school, I'm going to put it here. Once it graduates to college, I'm
Mhm.
going to put it here. Okay. Now, and they're thinking about just like moving it through this automation sequence, this systemized sequence. Well, there's other things going on. There's age campaigns, there's relevancy, there's placement spots, there's like within that campaign, are there other keywords eating up the budgets or getting the spend? Like, where's that campaign in a queue? There's a lot of things going on. So try not to be so rigid in your systems that you're like, just, I have to be this organized and I have to do it this way for it to work. I think you should try to be a little bit more loose. And if you're using anything like we're using KPOC for organization, there's a lot of other tools to do, you know, Amazon PPC stuff. But I don't really care. Like, it used to be more so when I was doing everything manually by hand. Like, the simpler it was, the easier it was for me to manage. Within KPOC, for example, I can know that I'm looking at the keyword as a whole, not the keyword within one campaign to get my data. And so I can just look at that keyword and see how it's doing from my automatic and my manual, for example, and be like, okay, combined, how are my keywords doing? And so giving you a look that's more, a broader look across your, you know, your different campaigns and what you're doing. I think one problem I see a lot of consultants, PPC experts, people, you know, other agencies, when I get into their accounts, is they run automatic for a long time and they get products that get 100 sales or 100 orders across 100 different keywords. And so they've got, wow, my product can be sold in 100 different ways. And look at all these sales coming in through all these keywords I've gleaned out. Well, actually having 100 different terms that convert is a problem of itself. That is a major problem also, because now you're like, where do I focus? What keywords actually matter? Like, I need to pick 5, 10 and go all in on them than the 100. And so how do I go from 100 back down to 10? When you're going from 0 to 100, it seems like an easier strategy. I think it's a harder strategy to go from 100 back to 10. And that's when you start thinking about click-through rates and conversion rates and, you know, the ROI, the ROAS on each key term and things like that, which we won't get into that because I don't have time. But sometimes getting too many keywords that have 1 or 2 sales behind them instead of one that's getting 10, 15, 20 regularly is a problem too. And you've made yourself kind of have decision paralysis in which way to go within your keywords too. So something to think about for beginner PPC people is not every conversion is something you want to hold on to forever. It's notice it, see if it happens multiple times, like I was saying before. And if not, try to refine yourself down to the terms that convert for you over and over and over.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That's something I see with sellers. It's hard as consultants sometimes as well. So I can't even imagine for sellers, like, you're like, but I know this keyword should convert. Meanwhile, you're just spending with no sales and you're like, it should. Why is it not? And you hold on to things for too long. And unfortunately, sometimes end up wasting more ad spend than you really should. Another good question from Gilbert. What are your thoughts on using data from search query performance and brand analytics in creating manual campaigns?
That's all you, Liz.
I would say I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan. I think it works really well. I would have no issue in using that. One thing to think about when you're constructing the campaigns, and this is something that we do and has made a lot of sense for us in our agency, is creating campaigns based on strategy and the origins of the keyword. So for example, if you wanted to test a search query, instead of like putting it into an existing campaign and sort of like lumping it in with keywords that you found at a whole bunch of other places, I would create a campaign specifically for, these are my search query performance keywords, these are my brand analytics. Maybe you combine those two because they're, you know, kind of relatively similar, but that allows you to thoroughly test, because when you lump it all in with something else, you're like, did I get it from here? Did I get it from there? You know, it's a little bit hard to tell the origins of where you found something. And so again, we use campaigns as like budget control, but also sort of like strategy and keyword origins to help us make
organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you can put it in the campaign name as well to say like, these are my brand analytics keywords. Yep.
Because I think also if you're running, let's say you're trying a whole bunch of different things and all of a sudden you're like, man, I really need to lean up. My ACOS has gotten out of control. My TACOS is out of control, whatever the case might be. Whenever you name things properly, like in the campaigns, you have them organized like that. It's going to be like, look, I'm going to immediately go after my offensive product targeting. I'm going to close that down. I'm going to close down my competitor brand name searches that I'm going after. I'm going after direct competitors. Close that down. Why? Because those are probably your worst converting they're like more of a stretch. It's like offense, you're gathering some market share, but it's like it's costly to do it. And when you have stuff organized like that, you can be like, clean up, clean up, clean up, clean up. Okay, now I'm just down to my stuff that like works really, really well. So when you're feeling aggressive and sales are coming in or you're in season, you're able to turn on all those other levers. And then when you're like needing to lean up, like maybe you're going out of season or you're just needing to be tighter with your budget. If you have things organized really well, I think that naming, that strategy, that organization can come in big.
Yeah, definitely. Muhammad said, thanks for sharing some solid stuff here, guys. So awesome. We're glad you're getting something from tuning in. Probably about our last question. This is a long one. We're gonna have to take it down after we read it because it's a big one, but lots of content here. So I appreciate it. Hello, Elizabeth. Andrew, I have a product struggling to get organic rank on a keyword. I have the highest click share on it. Conversions are also regular. If you're listening still, my follow-up question on that would be, when you're saying you have the highest click share, I'm guessing that would be search term impression share reports. Or are you looking at search query reports? I'd be curious to define that. Conversions are also regular. Conversion rate is a median range for the category. Product is in the top 8th of the category. The rest of the competitors are all below, but still ranked organically, but not mine. Keyword is in the title. I can't compete with the top 5 as they are half price, made with different material. All the other same price as mine are much lower in category, yet my product struggles to rank 1. Oh, this is an interesting one. I got some thoughts, but I'd be curious to hear yours, Drew.
I think you need to go, Liz, because I'm reading it again just to make sure I completely understand. Go ahead.
Yes. So what I would say, my reading of your question is that you're looking at things on an overall category and BSR, which is, it's entirely possible for you to have a bestseller badge absolutely blow your competition out of the water in terms of like your overall cumulative sales and still not be able to rank for a very specific keyword. The reason why is for you to have a better overall conversion rate or better overall sales. It means that you're doing overall, like in the total cumulative sales. However, when it comes to search rank, that is determined by your performance on that single shopper search query. So what's happening is that although you're competitive overall, it sounds like you're not as competitive for this one shopper search. And from my understanding of which, again, I appreciate how much context you gave in this question, is the top competitors on this specific search query are lower priced items. It could be, as much as that's painful to like, it's just a function of sometimes the competition. Sometimes on specific shopper searches, the shoppers just prefer a lower price item. There are certain shopper searches where the type of people who are typing in that search query are people who are just looking for a bargain. How you can validate this is going to be in, looks like you wrote follow up looking at search query data for click share here. Okay, cool. So you have better click share. So it's a function. It sounds like it's a function of the conversion rates most likely on this particular search query, which again, I think is a function of just the competition and low price, that kind of low price equation. How you can validate that is, again, if you're looking at search query performance, great. You should be actually able to see the average, what is it? I think it's like average purchase product price in the search query report. And you can look at that against all of the other shopper search queries. If that average purchase price is lower on that search query, then like it's kind of a function of kind of how the shoppers are looking. The other place that will give you average price points, I'm trying to remember how possible it is to go in and find like a specific search query, maybe a little bit more of a look around to see if you can find, like, again, this one keyword, is the product opportunity explorer will also give you like average price points. That one, I believe, also gives it by what's defined as a niche. That's kind of an interesting concept. I probably should do a video on product opportunity explorer because it's a pretty sweet analysis tool, but that will also give you context, again, just to see, is this a price point thing or is it a conversion rate thing? And then, so what you're trying to do is, can I generate a higher volume of sales through this one specific search query. So if you're already advertising on it, sounds like, you know, you're working at it from all angles there. The other thing that you can do, and this may or may not be profitable, is you can actually target the search pages for all of the high ranked competitors on that keyword, which will also gain you some additional visibility there. Whether or not you convert on those, if they're lower price point, I don't know. I know Drew knows a lot about creative. So sometimes, like, you know, main imaging, showing like why it's worth it to buy the more, you know, more premium offer. You definitely want your listing to convey that. But there are just some searches where people are just looking for a bargain and they don't care about the premium offer, which is kind of a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
Yeah, I think Liz, you're exactly right. And well said. I think to double down on that, what I would say is if you want to not just say, oh, that's just someone's opinion, then what you need to do is use a tool like Product Opinion or Google surveys, or find some kind of tool like this. I've seen some presentations of people that do this, and they ask customers in their market, certain things that help them determine like what customer sentiment is. Like if you're selling steel and everyone else is selling copper for cheaper, maybe someone that's buying a fly swatter just doesn't care if it's made of copper or made of steel, like depending on what you're selling. And so you think like, well, I went with steel. Well, no one cares with this product. And so that's kind of what she's saying, is like they care about price here. So you're like, I've got this and I've got this. Well, those aren't things that they care about. They don't care that they don't, you know, some people don't care if a guy is short or a guy is tall. Some people do if they're dating, right?
Yeah.
So like, do you have a product that people care about that difference? Or when they find you through different ways, they actually are like, they're willing to buy from you and purchase from you because with that specific search that's getting them to there, the things that you're selling matter to them. But when they come in under like just fly swatter without saying like luxury fly swatter, they just say fly swatter, they don't care and they really want the cheaper one. So I think it's like getting some customer sentiment around those beliefs that those hypotheses, so to speak, and then being like, look, if I can't compete on just fly swatter, then I need to compete on leather fly swatter because mine's leather, and anyone looking for that will be looking for a premium, and then they won't care about price. So if you're just going similar to kind of what I was talking about with the leather top hat, as if with the leather top hat, if I go against all the other leather top hats, we have the better product. It's made of leather. It's really nice. But if someone's just looking for it for you know, a cheap Halloween costume, they're not going to spend the $200 one. If they're going to a festival and a cosplay, for example, putting myself next to other cosplay items, then all of a sudden my $200 item isn't expensive for that customer. It's almost like playing golf as a hobby. It's an expensive hobby to be in cosplay. People are willing to spend more money. So it's kind of like, if you have a product that's not just value based, don't compete with value based people. And that's the same thing as a keyword. Like in theory, by choosing that keyword and being like, I need to invest in this keyword, you're saying I'm willing to go. Like I'm an agency. Marknology is not the cheapest agency in the space. Like we've been doing this a long time. We're experienced. We have amazing staff. Like we have strategy. We have all these things. I'm not trying to compete with every agency out there in space, the cheapest of them. If I'm going head to head with them, that's not my ideal customer profile. I'm looking for the ones that want expertise. They want pros. They want strategy. It's not just chasing it to the bottom for help. They're looking for like more professional help. The same thing with your product. I think the keywords can be like, oh, I want all of those customers. I want all of them. And like Liz is saying, it's a little hard to swallow, but instead being like, that's not actually who's ideal for me. They're going to have a lot of return problems. They're going to have issues with our product. They're going to give us bad reviews because they think they're overpaying for it. Instead, I want to find someone that thinks they're getting value with my product. And they think they're getting a deal because it should be priced more, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are really, really great points. And I appreciate you adding that. You added additional context to the product. So, I mean, you're thinking about this correctly, what I would say from this comment. So product is genuine leather. The category has both genuine and synthetic leather. I have surpassed all the genuine leather in terms of category rank. I'm not trying to compete with the synthetic one. So you're thinking about this correctly. You're like, those are not my market. Those are the cheap options. And I can't compete because it's completely different product essentially. But your question was the other genuine leather ones are still ranked higher despite them being category. Yeah, so it has to do with a function of how many sales you're getting through that specific keyword. I would say try to figure out One, if you can increase your conversion rates at all, do any kind of listing optimizations, that's going to help because that's going to speed up, how many orders you're getting here. And then the other thing is how many other adjacent ways can you target this specific shopper search with advertising? So I would look into product targeting, potentially long tail keywords, those, like kind of all the other, okay, if I'm going really competitive on this one keyword, maybe those ads sales aren't enough to push me up in rank. Can I sort of figure out other ways? And then you'll just have to see if the performance of those other ads are worth it to keep running, because sometimes if you look at the ACoS and profitability, it's not. So you want to make sure you're also making good decisions for your brand as well. And with that, we're actually, Drew, I appreciate your staying 6 minutes over for us. So we appreciate, I appreciate you joining us today. And I appreciate your perspectives you lend to this as somebody who manages, again, kind of like all aspects. He says, great. Thank you, Elizabeth, Drew, for detailed answers. I appreciate it. We appreciate you. We appreciate you showing up. So last, if somebody loved what you had to say, needs help with something, or they just want to check out your stuff, Drew, what is the best place for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I live on LinkedIn a lot. So LinkedIn, just Andrew Morgans. Also a contact form on the website, marknology.com. Personally, as an entrepreneur, I'm engaging on Instagram. Like that's just, I'm rarely selling on Instagram. It's more so like what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, traveling, inspirational quotes and stuff like that. So if you just want to connect as an entrepreneur on Instagram, that's great for me. If it's business, like LinkedIn or the website. Hopefully I'm back on the show again so I can get to chat with you guys. I love getting to talk PPC. I'm the director of ads at Marknology, but me and Liz work together on lots of different projects. And I think you have to have, you are who you hang with. So we're always strategizing around just different topics like we even talked about today. And I'll get stuck and I'll ping Liz and it goes back and forth. So, we do content. We help listings get ready, get retail ready. So, you're trying to work with Liz, make sure your content's up to snuff so her stuff can do the work. And that's where you find me. So happy to chat with anyone. Appreciate everybody participating, bringing some questions, even some hard ones. It was fun trying to think of some interesting perspectives, maybe just some problems without having all the info. So to everybody out there, just keep at it. It's all about testing and trying new things.
Yeah, no, definitely. I appreciate the perspective you added to the conversation. So if you are interested in getting a hold of Drew for anything, marknology.com, recommend going and checking out his website. He was saying there's a form at the bottom. Go fill that out. And definitely posting some cool stuff on LinkedIn. So you can look him up, Andrew Morgans, on LinkedIn. Get a hold of him there, see what he's up to, because it's some pretty awesome stuff. So as always, I really, really appreciate you all. And we will be back here next Thursday for another Ask Junglr.